The early morning light streamed through the narrow gaps in the wooden Venetians. Olivia Hammond rolled to her side and took a moment to admire the way the sunlight threw bands of light across the bare torso of her husband. At 33, he was still in great shape and certainly didn't perpetuate the stereotype of the scrawny computer nerd. Her gaze traveled up his body, and she smiled. Stephen had thrown his arm over his eyes, blocking the light. She glanced beyond him, to the bedside clock. She had 20 minutes before her alarm was set to go off. Olivia sighed. "You know I'd prefer to be here with you and the girls, but I'm so close to nailing this deal, I can taste it. If I pull it off, it will mean another big bonus. That will be the second one this year. Think what fun we could have with that." It was Stephen's turn to sigh. Long experience told him it would be fruitless to argue with her or ask what they needed more money for. Once upon a time, he'd been the biggest earner in their family, but that time had long since passed. Olivia now easily outstripped him. She was ambitious and overachiever. It wasn't about the money for her. It wasn't even about the negotiating. It was about sizing up her prey, detecting their weaknesses, and then strategizing to exploit them. She was a hunter. It was about winning, about the deal. Always the deal. Even as one was on the brink of being achieved, she would already be planning her next one. "I know. I also know you'll pull it off. You have an amazing ability to succeed. Everything you touch turns to gold." Olivia laughed. "To have such an amazing ability in my profession is quite an asset, wouldn't you say?" Stephen answered by hugging his wife. "Here." "My turn," he said, pushing the soapy loofah into Olivia's hand. He maneuvered them until he faced the spray of the shower head. He placed his hands on the cool tiles and, closing his eyes, angled his face into the flow. At the click-clack sound of Olivia's heels, Stephen poured a coffee, black with one. He pushed the cup to the empty space along the kitchen counter and winked at his 6-year-old daughters. They giggled. "What are you two munchkins laughing about?" Olivia asked. "You," Mummy said, Hannah, giggling. "Yeah," piped in Haley. "Daddy says you can't do anything until you've had a coffee." Olivia paused, the edge of her cup resting on her bottom lip for a moment before she pulled it away without having taken a sip, turning the cup this way and that, looking at it as if seeing it for the first time. Haley and Hannah giggled into their cereal. "I do declare your daddy may just be right," Olivia stated, smothering a smile. "Guess I better have a cup then, or who is going to braid your hair?" "Daddy?" "No," squealed the girls together. "Daddy is terrible at braids." "And last time, he forgot our ribbons," added Haley. "Oh, the shame, the never-ending shame of the forgotten ribbons," wailed Stephen, dramatically dropping his face into his hands. All his girls laughed at his antics. Stephen got serious and hustled his women along. Not for the first time, mentally likening it to trying to herd chickens. Once the girls commenced school, which meant Olivia's return to work, Stephen normally got the girls up, dressed, and fed. Olivia saw to the finishing touches, such as their hair and ribbons. If he didn't have an early morning meeting or work emergency, Stephen drove the girls to school, Olivia's office being in the opposite direction. Today, this being school holidays, and therefore unnecessary for him to drive his daughters, Stephen had arranged to drive Olivia to the airport to catch a flight to Melbourne. She and a group of other banking bigwigs were negotiating a deal with a big multinational that was potentially worth millions. The girls would be spending the day at the zoo with Mrs. Foster. Mrs. Foster was a godsend who'd been with them since the girls' birth. Stephen had initially been resistant to the idea of employing someone to assist Olivia in caring for their daughters in the house, having himself been raised in a blue-collar home with a stay-at-home mother, but Olivia had been insistent. If she had to take a break from her career in order to care for the girls, she wanted to improve her education at the same time. With Mrs. Foster living in a granny flat on the property and taking care of the cooking and cleaning, Olivia was able to study online, adding a degree in economics to her one in accounting as well as completing her MBA. Stephen readily conceded his reservations had been unwarranted. Olivia was a good mother, and Mrs. Foster proved time and again what an asset she was. She cleaned, cared for the girls if they were ill, provided after-school and holiday care, babysat when necessary, and cooked a tasty and nutritious meal for the entire family on weeknights. Haley and Hannah adored her, viewing her as a pseudo-grandmother. While Olivia fixed the girls' hair, Stephen quickly saw to their breakfast dishes as he felt it was wrong to leave such things for Mrs. Foster to clean up. Stephen heard the back door open and smiled. Mrs. Foster's timing was perfect as always. After hugs and the usual admonishments to his daughters to be good, have fun, and do as Mrs. Foster instructed, Stephen grabbed Olivia's overnight bag and headed for the garage. He thought the bag heavy, but didn't comment. Olivia being Olivia, he knew she'd have packed for every possible contingency. The lighting in the garage was dim, but Stephen didn't bother turning on any lights. They wouldn't be lingering long. He shoved the case in the trunk of their 4WD before moving to the side to open the passenger door for Olivia. She slid in, placing her briefcase and handbag on the floor beside her legs. As the garage door made its slow ascent, Olivia's chatter began. I wonder if that coffee shop, you know, the one with bicycles hanging on the wall, is still there on Berkeley Street. I don't know. Maybe. It's been 7 odd years since we left. A lot can happen in that time. Stephen answered somberly. He didn't like to be reminded of their time in Melbourne. Olivia continued, oblivious to Stephen's changed mood. I do so hope it's still going. They made the absolute best coffee, and their muffins were amazing. Olivia laughed. I might even let myself have one. Olivia was diligent about monitoring her carbohydrate intake since the birth of the girls. Her vigilance meant the entire family was, by association, vigilant. Poor Mrs. Foster had had to learn new recipes and adapt old ones to prepare the low-carb dinners Olivia required. Stephen made a token effort at smiling. It didn't reach his eyes. Shall I try to smuggle one back for you, my love? As I recall, you were rather fond of the raspberry, cream cheese, and white chocolate one. Yes, I was. Stephen agreed dryly, navigating their local streets on autopilot. But I think you cured me of that particular weakness. Stephen lifted his foot from the accelerator, allowing the car to slow at its own rate as they approached the intersection that would take them out of their quiet suburban area. Left would take them into the city, but right to the airport. With 30 yards to go, Stephen tapped the indicator stick downward. Change of plans, old boy. Turn left. Stephen and Olivia jumped at the gravelly voice coming from behind them. Olivia screamed and turned in her seat to face the voice, while Stephen gripped the steering wheel tightly and slammed on the brakes. The car screeched and fishtailed before coming to a sudden stop, jerking all the occupants forward and then back into their seats. Who are you? Screamed Olivia, staring at the gun being pointed at them. What do you want? Yelled Stephen at the same time. One question at a time, guys chuckled their assailant, clearly enjoying their fear and confusion. Who I am is someone you don't want to mess with. What I want, well, that's a bit more complicated. What you should be asking is why. Why should you do what I want? Why? Stephen asked with gritted teeth, gripping the steering wheel tightly. 2 reasons, really. I have a weapon, and what's the other reason? Oh yeah, I have your daughters. Panic filled the car as Olivia screamed and Stephen yelled, desperately trying to unbuckle himself and reach for the intruder. Their captor simply sat back and smiled. Are we done now, guys? He asked sarcastically once Olivia and Stephen fell into a tense silence. How do we know you have our daughters? Asked Stephen. They've gone to the zoo with Mrs. Foster, added Olivia, her tone defiant. Have they? Are you sure about that now, ma'am? The man rubbed his chin and cheeks, his fingers brushing against his growing facial hair. Olivia's attention was drawn to his face, and she gasped. Aside from his sunglasses, he didn't seem to be hiding his identity. Fear twisted in her stomach. Would she, Stephen, and their daughters make it out of this alive? 2 cars pulled up behind them and honked their horns. Best get moving. Make a left turn. Why? Where are you taking us? I'll let you know when the time is right, the man growled, pushing the gun into Stephen's side. Now make that damn left turn. Stephen obeyed. Now give me your phones. Slowly and without any tricks. He pocketed their phones in his vest. And the other one, he said to Olivia, snapping his fingers at her. She feigned innocence and confusion, but it didn't fool him. Enough with the games, ma'am. Give me your other phone. The one in your briefcase. Olivia grabbed her briefcase and opened it, retrieving the phone. She held it out to the man while avoiding eye contact with Stephen. She could feel his gaze on her, flipping between the road and her, as if he was trying to communicate something with his eyes. You have another phone? Stephen's voice was filled with anger. Now is not the time to discuss it, Stephen. The man in the back chuckled. Yes, Stephen. Now is not the time to argue or question your wife about her secret phone she didn't tell you about. Stephen glared at the man through the rearview mirror. Now is the time to do as you're told. We wouldn't want anything terrible to happen to your lovely girls, would we? You can't have them. They're not here. They left at the same time we did. Olivia's voice held a hint of defiance. I don't believe you. You're lying. Am I? The man snarled. He lifted his own phone, darting his gaze between the screen and Olivia's face. He pressed a few buttons before handing the phone to Olivia. Olivia glanced at the screen as she reluctantly took the phone. Her worst fears were confirmed. The man had their home number. How was that possible? It was unlisted. Olivia gasped, struggling to catch her breath. Trying to fight down the panic, she strained to hear Mrs. Foster's voice. It sounded off, not like her usual calm and confident self. She sounded shaky and on the verge of tears. Olivia felt a tightness in her chest, as if someone had clamped it shut. Hello, Mrs. Foster? It's Olivia. Oh God, I'm so sorry. They have us. Oh God, they have the girls. I'm so sorry. I couldn't stop them. Olivia dropped the phone onto her lap, as if it had burned her, and let out a wail of terror. The sound was piercing, like an animal in pain. Both men winced. They do, Stephen. They have our girls, Olivia sobbed, her shoulders shaking. Stephen pounded the steering wheel. What do you want from us? Why are you doing this? We're not rich or famous. Why? I believe you're rich enough, Mr. Techie. Now give me the phone, Ma. I am. What do you mean? What do you want? Just tell us, begged Olivia, handing back the phone. We'll do anything. Just don't hurt our girls. That's what I want to hear. Now, Stevie boy, drive us to the National Australia Bank on Liverpool Street. Olivia and Stephen exchanged glances. It was their bank. So, kiddos, how much money are we talking? How much have you managed to save up? Stephen opened his mouth to speak, but Olivia beat him to it. About $250,000, give or take. Stephen closed his eyes for a moment, holding his breath. TSK, Ma. I am. Have you forgotten what you said only a few minutes ago? You know, about being willing to do anything to save your daughters? It seems like you've just lied to me. Stephen watched the man in the rearview mirror, glaring. Let me recall. What was that number again? Oh, right. $322,054. 75. Does that sound familiar? Olivia and Stephen exchanged another glance. The amount was exact. Olivia spoke up, yes, that's correct. No more lies, Livy girl, or I might think you don't care about your little ones. Please, begged Olivia, wiping her tears on her jacket sleeve. Please don't harm our girls. Just do as you're told and stop with the games, and your girls will be safe. Olivia nodded, tears continuing to stream down her cheeks. The man frowned at her. Clean yourself up. You need to make a withdrawal, and we don't want you attracting attention with your tears, do we? Olivia shook her head as she searched for tissues and makeup in her handbag. Meanwhile, Stephen remained silent, stealing glances at their captor through the rearview mirror. The man caught him looking a couple of times, and Stephen quickly looked away, as if he had been caught in the act. In his peripheral vision, he saw Olivia using a sponge to dab foundation under her eyes. The journey continued in silence, with only the sound of their breathing and surrounding traffic. Tension filled the car, and only one person seemed unfazed by it all. Stephen turned onto Liverpool Street, slowing down as he searched for a parking spot. Nervous and stressed, he fumbled slightly as he attempted to parallel park. The man chuckled at his struggle, deepening the scowl on Stephen's face. For a brief moment, everyone was quiet as they stared at the bank across the road, about 30 yards away. The sound of the man opening his door snapped Olivia and Stephen out of their thoughts, and they followed suit, stepping onto the sidewalk and awaiting further instruction. All right, Ma. Am, time to make a withdrawal. I don't need to remind you to avoid raising suspicions, do I? No secret messages or unusual behavior that might tip off the staff. We wouldn't want anything to happen to your little ones, would we? If I even sense something is wrong, you'll never see your girls again. Got it? Olivia nodded, taking the briefcase that the man held out to her. Her eyes welled with tears, but she blinked them away. Got it. Her voice came out hoarse, and she cleared her throat before trying again. Understood. Wait, I just remembered. Stephen spoke up as Olivia took a step towards the curb. For withdrawals over $50,000, $2 signatures are required. The man stared at Stephen, as if studying him to determine his honesty. The same warning goes for you, Daddy. If I even suspect you're planning something heroic, I'll harm your girls. Stephen nodded grimly. Relax, man. $320,000, give or take, is a small price to pay for your little darlings. The man laughed, right? Stephen nodded again. Right? Taking the briefcase from Olivia's hand, Stephen checked for traffic before stepping onto the road. They had to pause at the midway point. Upon reaching the opposite side, he turned back to their captor and nodded once. Olivia and Stephen entered the bank and made for one of the counters. Stephen frowned as he watched Olivia attempt to complete a withdrawal slip. Her handwriting was barely recognizable as her own. Without saying a word, he took the slip from her and crumpled it up, tossing it into the small trash can provided. He reached for another slip and proceeded to fill it out. He passed the pen to Olivia so she could sign. He could see her hand was shaking. One glance at her face told him she was hanging on by a thread. "Take a few deep breaths," he whispered close to her ear. "We can't mess this up. Think of Haley and Hannah. They're depending on us." Olivia nodded, biting her lip. She took the pen and signed. Tears welled in her eyes. "He's going to take everything. Everything we've worked so hard for." Stephen shrugged. What could he say? Why, Stephen? Why us? Why now? Is your firm working on any government or, I don't know, sensitive contracts? Stephen considered the question. It was a fair one. He worked in security and surveillance software. Finally, he shook his head. Nothing that would warrant this. What about you? Have you been involved in any deals that have gone wrong? Or pissed anyone off? Any CEO or CFO, downsized? Any middle manager sent packing? Anyone at the bank angry because you got promoted over them? Olivia looked distressed. A few tears escaped, and she tried to discreetly wipe them away with her fingers. I don't know. Business takeovers and mergers inevitably lead to staff and management being let go, and some of the guys in my department resent me for being promoted over them. Merchant banking is still very competitive. But this? To do this? To take our girls? Olivia dropped her face into her hands. Her shoulders shook in an effort to keep her emotions under control. I don't know. I really don't know. Stephen assessed his wife. He was sure she wouldn't pass with the bank teller. Go back to the car. I'll handle this. One look at you, and the bank will know something's wrong. We can't have any issues. Stephen expected Olivia to argue. She didn't. With one final, grateful glance, she lowered her head and walked to the door. She didn't look back once outside. Taking a deep breath, Stephen joined one of the queues. Here, we've done what you wanted, said Stephen, handing the man the briefcase. Now let us and our girls go. The man looked to his left and then his right before settling his gaze on Stephen. Funny, I don't see anyone in a position to be dictating terms to me. The man's expression turned fierce. We're done when I say we're done. Understand, Daddy? Stephen pressed his lips together and nodded. The man turned to Olivia, looking her up and down condescendingly. You're looking a little tired, sweetie. What happened to the hotshot negotiator? The closer. The money-making machine? The woman with nerves of steel? Gotta say, I'm disappointed. The man laughed mockingly. Not that great in a crisis after all, hey? Olivia hung her head, her shoulders slumping. Stephen had never seen her looking so defeated, not even after Melbourne. How does it feel to lose everything you've worked for, Mrs.? Olivia's head shot up. She looked devastated. Stephen wrapped a protective arm around her. We haven't lost everything, Stephen replied quietly. Money isn't everything. We still have the girls and each other. Wow, quite the philosopher, aren't we? Sneered the man. You keep doing what I tell you, and you will keep your daughters alive and well. But we already did what you asked, Stephen began. But wait, there's more, the man interrupted, imitating the voice and intonation of a well-known character from a television advertisement. Stephen winced, preparing himself for another difficult task. What else can we do for you? You've taken all our money. What else can we give you? Oh, this is an easy one, little lady. I want you to make a delivery for me. Stephen and Olivia looked at each other in confusion. Why would the man kidnap them and their daughters for a delivery? The money was understandable, but a delivery. We're going to Market Street, Daddy. Stephen turned the key, and the Range Rover roared to life. He pulled into traffic, pushing his way into the right lane, preparing to turn into Pitt Street. Traffic was still heavy. Rush hour seemed to last all day in the city center. They inched forward. Stephen was convinced they could have walked to their destination faster. At the Bathurst Street intersection, he turned right and shortly afterward, left onto Elizabeth. The road ran beside Hyde Park, but today, both Stephen and Olivia were blind to its beauty. Not so, their captor. Maybe you should spend more time during your lunch breaks, Mrs., in the park. Maybe by the pool of reflection. Do a little reflecting on your life choices. What do you mean by that? Snapped Olivia, half turning in her seat. Stephen saw that she was glaring at the man. Now, little lady. Don't get all high and mighty with me. It didn't take much investigation to know why you guys moved from Melbourne to Sydney. Someone was a bit misbehaved, I think. Stephen winced, and Olivia gasped in shock. She looked at Stephen, who kept his gaze fixed on the road ahead. That was a long time ago, and Stephen forgave me. We worked through it. You have no right to bring up our past and rub it in our faces. Oh, but I do, Mrs. My gun gives me a lot of power, and you do well to remember that. I'm not one of your employees. By the way, your employees, they don't like you very much. Neither do your colleagues. I wonder why. Could it be you've mistreated them too much? Stepped on too many toes in your climb to the top? Or is it your demanding attitude? Olivia ignored the insults. There was no point in defending herself. Merchant banking was a competitive world. It was a dog-eat-dog industry. As a woman, she had to be twice as driven as the men she worked with to be taken seriously. After Melbourne, she had made sure to keep her aggressive but competitive side only at work. She looked at her husband's profile. Knowing him as well as she did, she recognized the pain he was feeling. The man's remarks about Melbourne had hit their mark. The tension around Stephen's eyes, the lines of tension at the corners of his mouth, the way his hands gripped the wheel. Everything about him showed anguish and the effort it took to keep his emotions in check. Seeing his silent suffering, she momentarily forgot about her daughters. Stephen's pain was her pain, and she hated that her actions were the cause. She hated that she had given their captor the ammunition to hurt her husband. It saddened her to know that the events from their time in Melbourne still had the power to wound Stephen. Don't listen to him, Stephen. He's trying to drive a wedge between us. Melbourne was so long ago. We love each other. We're happy. We have 2 beautiful daughters. The man clapped his hands slowly, the tempo increasing. Then he laughed. Well done. Well done. Olivia turned to him angrily. She despised being mocked. Why are you doing this? How do you know these things? Why? Why go through all this trouble to investigate us? Neither of us is famous or super wealthy. Well avoided, Mrs. My reasons are my own, and you do well to watch your attitude. You wouldn't want to make me angry. Just one phone call could, well, let's just say, change your entire world. Shut up, Olivia. Just do what the man says, said Stephen quietly. To the man, he asked, where exactly on Market Street? What address? 100, the man replied. Do you know who has offices on the 5th floor of 100 Market Street? No. Stephen tensed, knowing the address must have some significance to either him or Olivia. He gave Olivia a side glance. She had paled, and her hands were clenched so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were white. Stephen looked at the man through the rear-view mirror. The man caught him looking and smiled smugly. How about you, Mrs.? Do you know who's on the 5th floor? Olivia turned her head to look out the window, ignoring the question. Surprisingly, the man didn't insist on an answer. Instead, he chuckled. The sound grated on their nerves. Stephen turned left and immediately began searching for a parking spot. It wouldn't be easy. Parking spaces in the city center were always scarce. But luck seemed to be on his side, or was it the man? He found a spot about 100 yards from their destination. Once again, they all got out of the car. Olivia looked tense and cautious. Stephen was on edge, every muscle in his body tight, like a bowstring pulled taut. Their captor handed Stephen a large envelope filled with unknown contents. Olivia stumbled backward, her eyes fixed on the envelope. Stephen looked at her with a questioning expression, but she avoided meeting his gaze. To their surprise, the man handed Stephen a phone. He watched them both with amusement. I may have more instructions for you. Don't get any funny ideas or try to be a hero. Remember, I have your daughters. 5th floor, 100, he repeated. Both Olivia and Stephen nodded, turning in unison towards the office building that was their next target. Oh no, Mrs. You're sitting this one out. Hubby gets to make the delivery all by himself. Once again, Stephen shot Olivia a questioning glance. Once again, she avoided answering him through her eyes. As soon as Stephen was out of earshot, the man began. Can you guess what's in the envelope, Olivia? She nodded miserably. So who's been a mischievous girl? Get a little too ambitious, did we? Or did you just start to believe your own lies? You probably already know, she replied dejectedly. The deal depended on knowing. The man shook his head, clearly enjoying her misery. Tut, 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 tut. Insider trading. You could get into big trouble. Maybe even do some jail time if hubby delivers that envelope to the Aussie Securities and Investments Commission. ASIC frowns on people who cheat and break laws. Olivia hung her head, all fight gone from her. If what was in that envelope was what she suspected, her career was over. Life as she knew it was over. Stephen would be so shocked and disappointed in her. What would she say to the girls? Would Stephen stand by her in court? Wait for her if she had to go to prison? She shuddered as a bleak future opened up before her. I tell you what, Mrs. I'll give you one phone call to convince hubby not to deliver that envelope. Can't be fairer than that, can I? Olivia looked up, uncertain whether the man was toying with her or not. Hope flooded her veins when he held out a phone to her. She grabbed it with unseemly haste, fearful he'd pull it out of her reach. A quick glance told her she had her own phone. The burner one. She suppressed her initial reaction of guilt. She glanced at the man and knew by the knowing look on his face her being given the burner phone was intentional. One rule: you can't tell him I've given you this chance. Olivia took a deep breath to still the trembling in her hands and punched in Stephen's number. Hello? Stephen answered uncertainly. Baby, it's me. Don't deliver the letter. Olivia, I have to. He'll hurt the girls if I don't. Trust me, please. Don't deliver it. Why are you risking the safety of the girls? You know I can't ignore his instruction. Baby, trust me. Please just trust me. Don't deliver it. Throw it in a trash can. He'll never know. Olivia looked at the man as she said the last sentence and recoiled at the smirk on his face. What's in it that has you so rattled that you'd risk Haley and Hannah? Stephen, I can't tell you. You'll just have to trust me. Please don't deliver that envelope. Please, do it for me. It's important. Important to me, to us. Please just toss the envelope away. The man made a scissoring action across his throat, signaling her time was up. Olivia made one last plea. Stephen, baby, please. Please trust me. Please don't deliver the envelope. She ended the call, her entire body quaking as she handed the phone back to the man. Her heart raced. Surely Stephen would do as she asked? Surely he'd trust that she wouldn't put their girls at risk. Are you and honesty even on speaking terms? The man asked mockingly. You've got to ask yourself who's the real criminal here, you or me. Olivia turned her face away, her cheeks burning at the man's taunt. It struck a little too close to home. After a long moment, Olivia risked a peek at their captor, watching as he grabbed another phone out of one of the pockets of the bulging vest. Her phone. She recognized the scuff mark on the bottom corner. He pressed a few buttons. She realized it was her PIN to unlock the phone. How could he know these things, Olivia? Stephen's exclamation was so loud Olivia heard it clearly, despite the distance between her and her captor. Sorry, sport. It's not the missus. It's your worst nightmare. When you get up to the 5th floor, I want you to get the receptionist or some other office employee to take a photo of you handing over the envelope. I don't care how you do it. Just get it done. Okay. Stephen replied hesitantly. Olivia wanted to scream at Stephen. Who would he listen to? Her or their captor? Olivia silently willed Stephen to trust her and tossed the envelope. He had to know she'd never risk the girls. She prayed as she'd never prayed before, more even than she had after Melbourne. Every minute seemed to drag, stretching Olivia's nerves to their limit. What was taking Stephen so long? At last, she saw him walking toward them. The envelope was gone. Had he thrown it away or delivered it? He seemed in no hurry and his head was down. He was avoiding looking at her but also at the man. Who had he disappointed? Without a word being said, the man held his hand out for the phone. Stephen passed it to him. The man opened it and went to the photos folder. Olivia was strung so tight she feared she'd snap. She held her breath, sending up one last desperate prayer. The man held the phone out to her. There on the screen stood Stephen. Beside him was a plumpish brunette, smiling as she accepted a thick ochre-colored envelope. Olivia collapsed, distraught. The bottom had just fallen out of her world. It was as if her bones had turned to rubber. Her knees hit the pavement, but she felt no pain. Her face rested in the palms of her hand, her shoulders heaved as huge gasping sobs were torn from her. Why? Why did you deliver it? Why didn't you do as I asked? Why didn't you trust me? She wailed, looking up at Stephen, her shoulders still shaking with the strength of her tears. Stephen stepped toward his wife, but the man waved him back. Oh dear. Are we feeling a little betrayed? A little let down? Not nice, is it, Livy? Not nice to have hubby choose me over you. Leave her alone, growled Stephen, and ignoring the man, leaned down to help Olivia back to her feet. He held her in his arms, stroking her back. Ah, ever the good guy. Has it ever occurred to you that maybe that's why she doesn't respect you? Not enough killer instinct. I'll show you killer instinct, snarled Stephen, releasing Olivia and lunging for the man. They scuffled, each landing a few punches. It was a sad indictment on their fellow pedestrians that not one stepped forward to try and break up the fight. In fact, most gave them a wide berth. Remember your daughters, Stephen the man whisper yelled, sidestepping to avoid another right cross. And suddenly it was over. Stephen deflated like a punctured tire. Olivia felt his frustration like a cold gust of wind. Back in the car, the pair of you, the man barked. You've drawn enough attention to us. At the click of the last seatbelt being fastened, Olivia turned her head. We've done everything you've asked of us. You've taken all our money and ruined my career. Please, I'm begging you, please let us and our daughters go. We won't go to the police. We just want to go home and have our daughters back. Nope, no can do. We have another delivery to do. Olivia faced forward, shoulders slumped. She couldn't think what else this man could do to destroy her. Where to? Asked Stephen sullenly. Chatswood. Stephen groaned. Olivia turned to him. Has he got something on you too? Did you do something illegal? Her voice showed her anxiety. Suddenly she was fearful their girls would be without either of their parents. What would happen to them if both she and Stephen went to jail? Stephen looked shocked and offended at Olivia's assumption. Of course I didn't do anything illegal. If he has what I think he has, it was something I did that was stupid, but most definitely not against the law. What? Olivia asked, bracing herself for the worst. Nothing more than indiscreet in-house emails about a new client who is so dumb, Tom and I can't figure out how he's made his millions. That's the only thing I can think of. Is that all? Olivia's relief was obvious in every line of her body. Enough to get me fired. Oh, very good, Stephen the man said. Great deductive powers. I can see why they pay you the big bucks. Pity they might have to let you go. Stephen jerked the car into the traffic, earning him a loud honk of protest from the Toyota he cut off. Stephen flicked the driver the bird. Their captor merely laughed. Stephen zipped in and out of lanes and accelerated in order to cross an intersection before the lights changed from amber to red. My, we are in a hurry. Might as well get it over and done with. Everyone fell silent. The atmosphere in the car was tense with Stephen and Olivia deep in thought, and the man observing. Assessing. Olivia stared out the side window. The man was systematically destroying them. Why? She couldn't figure it out. Did he work for the client Stephen had disparaged to a colleague? If so, the revenge was rather extreme. In the end, did the why even matter? By the end of the day, they would have no cash, Stephen's job would be on the line, and there was a strong possibility she would be arrested. And then there was their daughters. What had the man done to them and Mrs. Foster? Olivia prayed for her girls. She couldn't bear the idea of them coming to any harm. Everything else that had happened was survivable. The loss of Haley and Hannah was not. Stephen was hanging on by a thread. He just wanted it all to be over. He just wanted to be home with his girls. Whatever other fallout came from the day could be coped with. Crossing the harbor bridge was, as usual, a nightmare. Once they were on the North Shore, Stephen drove as one familiar with the area. He parked around the corner from the office building owned by the client and turned to face their captor. Who's doing the delivering? You might as well drawled the man, enjoying their discomfort. You know the drill. A photo handing over the document. No funny games. Blah, blah, blah. As he spoke, he held out a phone and envelope. This one not as thick as the one that had been delivered to ASIC. Have fun, teased the man, laughing at his own joke. Olivia glowered at him. They both watched as Stephen strode toward the corner like a man on a mission, which, in essence, he was. Why are you being so mean? If this is about me, why punish Stephen? Why take our girls? All will be revealed, Mrs. More darn mystery and riddles. The man laughed. You need to learn how to put some fun into your workday. Fun? Shrieked Olivia. You call this fun? Settle down, little lady. You wouldn't want to upset me. Not when I have your precious daughters. Olivia immediately quietened down. To do so went against her instincts. She normally went straight for the jugular in negotiations. She liked to put her opponent on the back foot. Today, it was her feeling off balance. She hated feeling so powerless, so ineffectual. It smacked of failure, and failure wasn't in her vocabulary. Olivia watched the street, impatient for the sight of her husband. When he finally rounded the corner, her heart sank. He looked like a man beaten. She knew he too must be feeling the same helplessness, not to mention fear. She was. Being a loving father, as well as a proud and capable man, a man used to being in charge, it must be hard to be at their captor's mercy and not be able to protect his children. Without saying a word, he slid into the car and handed the man the phone. He buckled his seatbelt before placing his hands on the steering wheel, waiting for his next instruction. The man chuckled as he looked at the photo. Geez, man, you could have at least smiled. Stephen pursed his lips, biting back a sharp retort. Olivia reached across and squeezed his forearm comfortingly. Stephen smiled at her gratefully. Aren't you going to ask where to next? The man teased. You'll tell us when you're ready, Stephen replied tersely. You're the one in charge, after all. The man laughed. You'd make a good army officer even when you disagree or hate the command, you follow it anyway. Stephen looked in the rearview mirror at the man sharply. Yes, I know you spent time in the forces. Not in the field, though. No, you were nice and safe in the command center assisting with the coordination of the covert ops. Others got to do the dirty work. Olivia looked at her husband. He never spoke of his time in the forces, only once saying he'd lost too many friends to want to mentally revisit his time there. My nerdy computer job saved countless lives, you jerk. A lot of successful missions were done, in part, because of the information I provided the commanders leading those ops. Don't you dare mock me or those men, or I'll tear your throat out with my bare hands. And if you hurt my daughters, I'll tear your heart out too. The man merely laughed, unfazed by Stephen's anger. Yeah, so I heard, Captain. Keep your hat on. No need to go all rogue on me. Keep doing what I tell you and your family will do just fine. Olivia saw Stephen was not happy with the man's response. And why should he be? His words made it clear they still had obstacles to overcome before he would let them, and their girls go. She refused to even consider her family not surviving the day. To keep going, she had to believe. Let's see, the man said, steepling his fingers as if deeply pondering a decision. How about we take a nice little drive out to the Hawkesbury River? I know a nice little BB with great water views. With his words, Olivia knew the whole day had been about her. She fought to keep her posture upright and her expression neutral. How could the man know? She'd been so careful. No routines, no set days or times, no lunches or dinners, not even coffees outside the office. She was certain no one knew, no one other than Logan. Logan, her trusted friend, her colleague. Logan, who was meant to collect her from the domestic terminal after Stephen had dropped her off what seemed like forever ago. Yes, Logan, her teammate. Together, they'd pulled off 2 massive deals in 1 year. Deals worth billions of dollars to the bank. Olivia wanted to hit something. She was furious. Her career was in ruins, her family in danger, her husband possibly jobless. And for what? Nothing. Logan was nothing. He meant nothing. He was just a little reward she'd allowed herself for a job well done. She was the same to him. He, too, was married with kids. He loved his wife as much as she loved Stephen. They'd had a little self-congratulatory week-long fling after they'd pulled off the first deal and had the occasional get-together when the opportunity arose. Having gotten away with it, neither had seen any obstacle to having another little celebratory few-day adventure with the recent deal. It meant nothing, absolutely nothing, but now because of it, her whole life, and that of her family, was in jeopardy. Frustratingly, knowing the events of the day had something to do with her indiscretion still didn't answer the question of who was behind it. It couldn't be Stephen. Revenge had been taken on him too, and Olivia knew he was incapable of hurting her. If anything, he'd be like he was after discovering her affair with a colleague in Melbourne. He'd be devastated, depressed and withdrawn, and asking what she needed that she wasn't getting out of their relationship. And then there was the call to Mrs. Foster. She'd been terrified. There was no way Stephen would have planned something like that. What about Logan? Could he have arranged it all to discredit her and take her out of the running for any future promotion? He was certainly ambitious and ruthless enough to throw her under the bus. His drive to succeed was one of the things she found attractive about him. But would he risk her implicating him? And then there was Logan's wife. She came from old money. Her family had connections and would certainly have the money to pull something of this nature off. For all she knew, Logan was himself enduring a similar ordeal. Olivia gritted her teeth, frustrated. Her mind, her brilliant strategic mind, couldn't come up with solid enough answers to pinpoint the mastermind behind the day's events. "Figured it out yet, Livy?" asked the man. "What's he talking about, Olivia? Do you know why he's doing this to us?" Olivia hesitated, her intellect conflicted with her heart. Her intellect told her she could turn the situation around. It wouldn't be the first time she'd turned a seemingly certain loss into a win. It told her she could put a positive spin on the events of the day, on the BB at the Hawkesbury, and save herself from a difficult and awkward confession. Stephen need never know. Her heart felt differently. It said enough was enough. Her choices had hurt Stephen and her family more than she could have imagined. Her daughter's lives were at stake. It told her it was time to come clean and give Stephen the honesty he deserved. "Yes, I do. It's all my fault." "What? What do you mean?" asked Stephen. Olivia cringed. Looking at Stephen, she felt a deep remorse, a physical pain. She was responsible. Because of her, the stranger had their girls, their money was gone, and Stephen had probably lost his job. All of it none of his doing. Her own consequences were deserved. She had, after all, broken the law. "Oh my goodness. This is so hard. I don't know where to begin," she started, hoping she would find the right words so that Stephen would understand and forgive her. "Is this what you're like in the boardrooms, Livy?" asked the man. "Stop beating around the bush and just say it, woman." Olivia turned to glare at the man. Stephen waited, hands gripping the steering wheel. "Stephen, oh shoot. This latest deal, I bent the law." "You mean you broke it?" interrupted the man. Olivia sighed. "Yes, it's true. I broke it. I found out insider information on the stock. The deal depended on the client knowing, so I got them the information. Let me get this straight," Stephen said. "You broke the law and risked our family for a deal?" "When you say it like that, it sounds reckless." "Wrong. The bonus for us was going to be at least $250K. There was no reason for ASIC to suspect any wrongdoing." Olivia trailed off, seeing the look of disgust on Stephen's face. The look crushed her. Thinking you can get away with breaking the law doesn't make it okay to break the law. Honesty and integrity are doing the right thing even when no one is looking, rebuked the man. Olivia winced. The irony of a kidnapper lecturing her on ethics and morality went over her head. "And what else, Mrs.?" Olivia stared at the man, her expression that of a woman on her knees begging for mercy. She found none. Head hanging, eyes closed, she began, her voice barely audible. "On these deals we work as a team. A small, close-knit group, each individual with the skill set needed for the project or deal. Logan Priest and I led the team. We worked closely together. Olivia faltered. She knew how devastating her next words would be to Stephen. At that moment, she'd have given anything to not have to utter them. We celebrated as a sort of in-house congratulations." The car door opened. Olivia's head shot up. She looked to the side, expecting to see Stephen exiting the vehicle. She was wrong. Stephen was still in his seat, looking at her with something akin to hatred in his eyes. Olivia flinched as if struck. She turned her head this way and that. The man was gone. All that he'd left was his vest. He'd disappeared into the crowd. "What? Where?" she asked, confused. Another look around the car and she could see the man had taken the briefcase holding their life savings. "What's happening?" she asked Stephen, panicking. "Why did he leave? He's taken the money. What about Haley and Hannah? How can we get him to free Mrs. Foster and the girls if he's disappeared?" "No, he didn't. He hasn't taken the money." "What? Why? But he has the girls. I don't understand what's going on." "How does that feel, Olivia? How does it feel to not understand? To have nothing make sense? To be left in the dark about things that have great importance in your life?" "Stephen, what's going on?" Stephen ignored her questions. "Do you like feeling out of the loop? Do you like feeling uncertain? Scared? Confused? Powerless? Stephen, what do you mean? What about Haley and Hannah? Tell me what's going on. Why should I? Maybe I like keeping my secrets just like you do. I don't understand." "None of this makes sense. I know, Olivia. I know about Logan Priest. I know about the deal, the insider trading. And I know about the previous deal and the connection you had with him. I know about your secret meetings. And I know all about your success. It seems Logan Priest has it too. He certainly had it when he got close to you, according to what I've heard." Olivia couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her mind refused to accept it, but her face betrayed her guilt by turning bright red. Stephen couldn't have known. She had been so careful. But he did know. He just admitted to it. He knew about the affair with Logan too, and their secret rendezvous, and he hid his knowledge from her. She felt sick. Her stomach twisted in knots. Olivia opened the car door and leaned out, vomiting onto the street. She spat it out into the mess on the road. Olivia took deep breaths, trying to calm herself down. Her mind raced. It was hard to accept that Stephen was involved in all of this. This cruelty and deception were not like the man she married, but it was true. He knew everything. How could he be so unkind? How could he hurt her like this? You must really hate me to arrange for that man to take the girls. Are they okay? Yes, they're fine. They're at home with Mrs. Foster. They had a great time at the zoo, by the way. But Mrs. Foster, she sounded scared. Yes, she played along very well. She thought I was playing a mean joke on you. But I assured her that you would appreciate it in the end. Oh, my goodness, Olivia whispered. She looked at Stephen, feeling like she didn't recognize him at all. The Stephen she knew would never be so cruel, so deceitful. You had that man take all our money. But no, I didn't. Stephen reached into the back seat and showed her their phones. Check the banking app on your phone. All I took out was $100. Olivia didn't move. She believed him. Everything was starting to make sense now. It was all just an elaborate prank. Who is he? He's no one you know by the tone of his voice. Olivia knew it was pointless to ask about the man's identity. And the documents you sent to ASIC. Did you really want me to go to jail? Do you hate me that much? Stephen shrugged. The envelope was filled with blank paper. ASIC ended up with a bunch of useless documents. Olivia wouldn't be going to jail. She slumped, feeling relief wash over her. So, the delivery to your client was fake too? Stephen nodded. Why? Why go through all of this trouble? Why do you think? I don't know, Stephen. I don't know what to make of any of this. I'm not even sure I know who you are anymore. No, you probably don't. You've changed me. Congratulations. I now have the assertiveness you admire. Oh, Stephen. Please don't say that. I love you just the way you are. Stephen ignored Olivia's declaration. Do you really want to know why? Olivia nodded, even though her gut told her she wouldn't like the answer. I wanted you to feel a fraction of what I've been feeling for the past several months. I wanted you to experience what I went through in Melbourne 7 years ago. This was the only way I knew how. If I had just had an affair or divorced you, you wouldn't have truly understood the depth of my pain. I needed you to feel lost and hurt, to feel betrayed, vulnerable, and all the other terrible emotions that a betrayed spouse feels when the person they love stabs them in the back. You've only had to endure those feelings for a day. I've had to endure them for months. And that's just this time around. Oh, Stephen. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for hurting you. I never meant for you to find out, Stephen continued, not acknowledging Olivia's apologies. Olivia? AC? The two worst moments of my life involve you. Can you even comprehend what that means? I've witnessed death. I've been responsible for sending friends into dangerous situations where they lost their lives for our country. But do you know what was even harder to deal with? Discovering that the person I committed my life to betrayed me. When the person you promised to love treats you with such disrespect, but I didn't disrespect you, and I would never let anyone else disrespect you, Olivia interrupted, reaching out to touch Stephen's arm. He shook her hand off. I think we have very different ideas of what respect means. You may think that because you went to great lengths to hide your affair and didn't allow your lover to disrespect me, yes. I know you stopped him when he tried that. You showed me respect. But I believe that by being unfaithful behind my back, you disrespected my feelings, our vows, and my values, which you were aware of since we got engaged. Especially after what happened in Melbourne. Stephen paused, gazing out the window. There was so much more he wanted to say, but he didn't want to spend the rest of his life rehashing the downfall of their marriage. He had wasted enough time on her. Taking a deep breath, he decided to cram as much as he could into this one conversation and then let it go. If his words reached her, great. If not, he would move on. Living a life filled with bitterness and resentment was no life at all. It would be like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. To me, being betrayed felt like experiencing death while still being alive. The first thing that died because of your betrayal was our past. What was real? What was a lie? I will never know because I only have your word, and that word is proven to be false. Twice. Do you know what the second thing to die was, Olivia? Olivia shook her head, tears streaming down her face. The second victim was our future. The future we promised to share until death do us part. We don't have a future together anymore, Olivia. Not a shared one, at least. You destroyed it. You killed it with every secret meeting, every lie. We can work through this, Stephen. You forgave me once before. Please try to forgive me again. I promise I won't let you down. We can move if you want. Stephen shook his head. Do you think this is a matter of third time lucky? You promised to be faithful on our wedding day. You broke that promise within a few short years. And then, 7 years ago, you promised me again that you would never be unfaithful. You broke that promise too. Olivia, when someone treats you with such disregard, dishonesty, and disrespect over and over again, something inside of you changes. Your perception changes. Your feelings change. They diminish. It happens subtly over time. I tried so hard to forgive and forget what happened in Melbourne. It wasn't easy. It was difficult, but I tried. At first, I tried for you, later for the girls. I wanted to be able to trust you, to look into your eyes and see only the intelligent, funny, beautiful woman I fell in love with. I didn't want to see the conniving, deceitful person you showed yourself to be. The strange thing is, I almost succeeded. I almost forgot about it until those same feelings started coming up again. Nothing specific, just a gut feeling, a sense of déjà vu. At first, I denied it. No, I told myself that she wouldn't do this again. She wouldn't hurt me or the girls. But the feeling wouldn't go away. It grew and grew until I couldn't bear it anymore. So, I started investigating, and what I found confirmed my worst fears. You were betraying me again, lying to me again, hurting me again. After that, all I could see was the pain. I lost sight of the woman I married. She's gone now, or maybe she never truly existed. I'm here. I'm still the same person you married. Please, Stephen. I'm so sorry. It kills me to know that I hurt you. I got caught up in the game, in winning. I felt invincible. You said it yourself, I have a talent for success. Logan was just a part of the game. It meant nothing. Olivia recoiled, a look of horror on her face as she saw how deep Stephen's anger ran. Never, not even after Melbourne, had he ever spoken to her with such hostility. For the first time ever, she felt afraid of him. The car suddenly seemed very small, claustrophobic, and it wasn't over. Well, Olivia, lucky you, because from now on you won't have to worry about hurting my fragile self-esteem. Now you'll be able to spend time with whoever you want. But I love you, and despite what you say, I know you love me. Stephen shrugged. I did once upon a time. There was a time I loved smoking too. Really enjoyed it, but I gave it up when I realized I was being foolish, that I was risking my health and my future by continuing. Staying with you would be foolish. I'd be risking my mental and emotional well-being and my chance at a happy future. I'd be foolish to trust you again. Foolish to believe in you and your word again. I'm not foolish. I have been, but not anymore. You wouldn't be foolish, Stephen. You'd be loving and forgiving. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Seeing how hurt you are, how hurt my actions made you, I'd never risk it again. Stephen sighed. You don't understand, Olivia. You just don't. Let me give you an analogy. If you had to guess what the most amazing thing we did with the girls during last summer was, what would it be? What did we do that they talked about for months afterward? Olivia looked puzzled but answered. We went to that theme park up on the Gold Coast. Whitewater World. That's right, and the girls couldn't get enough. They loved it. Trips to the beach and the river couldn't compare. That's what your affairs are like. Nice, safe old hubby at home mowing the lawn, doing chores, reading stories to 2 6-year-olds can't compare to Mr. 3-piece suit, Mr. High-flying merchant banker. I'm not exciting to you anymore. I'm not forbidden. I'm not new and mysterious. I'm the same old, same old, same old. I'm not something you've rewarded yourself with. Whether you admit it or not, you'll always remember your affairs. They'll always be your exciting little escapes from married life. You'll think of them when you're bored or when I didn't bring my A game in the bedroom. I can't. Actually, I won't, too, try to compete with a fantasy. I wouldn't. I promise, I wouldn't. Stephen shook his head sadly. You're in denial, Olivia. Can you honestly tell me that you've never thought about your affairs? Maybe when I'm out of town? Or you're out of town? Olivia couldn't answer. Stephen was right. She had remembered and even thought about those memories. Exactly, said Stephen, nodding, not needing her confirmation to know he was right. It's bad enough that you do it when I'm not around. Can you imagine what it's like night after night to lay beside you wondering who you're dreaming about? But Stephen gripped the wheel, gently tapping his head against it. Olivia looked at him in alarm. Had he finally lost it completely? But no more. Olivia, did you learn nothing from today? Everything that happened was meant to make you feel something beyond a surface level. Pain, fear of loss, powerlessness, betrayal, abandonment, anger. You felt them. I know you did. I watched you. Why do you think I orchestrated that? I don't know. To teach me a lesson, whispered Olivia. No, not to teach. It was because I felt all those things and more in the last 8 months. I never thought I'd ever have to feel them again after Melbourne, not with you. But I did. I have. You did that to me. Remember today. Remember what you felt. Maybe the next time someone loves you, you'll think twice before hurting them. Oh gosh, Stephen, please don't give up on us. I need you. I love you. I want to grow old with you. It wasn't about love with Logan. It was just a mistake. Olivia, you're repeating yourself. It may not have meant anything to you, but it meant something to me. That's what you keep forgetting. Our relationship wasn't just about you. It was about me too. Do you realize you destroyed my love for you, shattered our life together, for something you considered just a game? That makes me want to break your heart because that's what your actions did to mine. Want to know a few statistics about relationships? Stephen shook his head as if trying to clear his mind. He ran his hand through his hair. Enough. This is getting me nowhere. You don't understand. Maybe you never will. Maybe you're incapable of it. Stephen's words repeated in Olivia's mind. You don't understand. Maybe you never will. Maybe you're incapable of it. She shuddered as she remembered the roller coaster of fear and uncertainty, of isolation and frustration, and the feeling of betrayal and loss she had gone through. It had been awful. The worst thing she had ever experienced, without a doubt. And this is what her actions had made Stephen feel. Olivia choked back tears of devastation. She had hurt the man she loved in the worst possible way. She knew deep down that she had believed if her mistake was discovered, he would forgive her. After all, he had forgiven her in the past. How arrogant she had been. Stephen was right, she had disrespected him and disregarded his feelings. She had pushed him to the limits to make her understand. Olivia panicked. She had committed terrible crimes against Stephen, but she loved him. She truly did. Stephen couldn't give up on her, on their relationship. He and their daughters were the most important things in her life. She had to make him understand. Stephen held up his hand. Enough. I said enough. Checking the rearview mirror, Stephen started the car, turned on the blinker, and merged into traffic. Do you like making deals, Olivia? Stephen didn't wait for an answer. They both knew it was a rhetorical question. Well, here's the deal. You buy an apartment. I buy one. The girls stay in the house with Mrs. Foster. It's not fair to take away the only home they've ever known just because you couldn't resist rewarding yourself with a little fun. Olivia winced, hearing Stephen use her own words from earlier. Coming from him, they seemed stupid, ridiculous. Stephen continued, either unaware or uncaring of her reaction. That means you and I will take turns. 1 week, one of us will have the girls, and the next week, the other one. No child support or alimony payments. We'll set up a joint fund where we both contribute equally to cover all household and expenses related to Haley and Hannah. Regardless of personal feelings, we'll be civil. I won't say anything negative about you, and I expect the same from you. If we both attend the same event, we'll be polite and friendly. The calmness and matter-of-factness in Stephen's voice unsettled Olivia. This wasn't a side of him she had ever seen. And Olivia, make no mistake, there will be no negotiations. It's a take it or leave it offer. If you cause me any trouble, if you fight against this, I will forget my intentions to protect the girls from knowing that their mother made mistakes, and I will hand over the real documents to the appropriate authorities. If it was up to me, that's exactly what I would do. I'd enjoy nothing more than sitting in the courtroom, watching the consequences of your actions catching up to you and your lover. I'd laugh when they handed down the sentence. The longer the sentence, the more I would laugh. You're lucky you gave me 2 wonderful daughters. For them, I'll show mercy. For them, I won't act on my desire to ruin you. Olivia looked out of the passenger side window, seeing nothing. She was too late. She had realized her mistakes too late. She recognized defeat. She had witnessed it many times on the other side of the negotiating table. Her marriage was over. She had lost. Epilogue. Olivia sat in the front of the church. She looked up into her side, admiring the beautiful stained glass windows. Without turning her head in the opposite direction, she knew Stephen and his wife Lauren were sitting at the opposite end of the pew. Lauren. How she disliked that woman. 10 years younger than her, and completely different. Fair compared to Olivia's dark hair, small compared to Olivia's tall figure. Blue-eyed and angelic versus Olivia's darker, more alluring appearance. But her looks and age weren't the reasons why Olivia detested her. She despised Lauren because her daughters adored her, because Stephen loved her, because he looked at Lauren the way he had once looked at Olivia. Stephen now looked at Olivia as if she were invisible, and it had been that way for over 20 years. Olivia resented that even 22 years after their separation, she still missed Stephen. She wished she could hate him for that. But how do you hate the man who sets the bar for all other men? She was angry at Lauren for being everything she wasn't, for the way her daughters admired her, hugged her at every opportunity. They should be raving about her, their real mother. Instead, they acted more formally around her. It wasn't fair. Hadn't she shown them that a woman could have a successful career and a family? Hadn't she set an example as a successful businesswoman? They should look up to her, admire her, respect her. Hadn't she always taken care of her appearance? Stayed as slim as she had been in her 20s? Broke through the glass ceiling? Earned a high salary for most of their lives? Didn't she have good taste? Appreciated art and culture? So why was it Lauren they idolized? Lauren, who they went to for advice. Sure, the woman owned a chain of fashion boutiques and had worked her way up from the bottom, but did that make her the go-to person for Olivia's daughters? Olivia mentally scoffed. Lauren probably used her charm to climb the ladder because she definitely lacked ambition. Olivia knew her thoughts were unfair and untrue, but she couldn't help it. In her mind, Lauren had taken her place as wife and mother. Olivia glanced to her right, looking at Mrs. Foster's profile. She was getting older, and it gave Olivia a small measure of satisfaction to see age catching up with the old bird. Mrs. Foster, too, silly old woman, adored Lauren. Olivia couldn't understand why the girls had insisted Mrs. Foster be there today. They hadn't needed a nanny in 10 years. It was Stephen's fault. Even after the girls had graduated high school, he'd insisted Mrs. Foster stay on in her little cottage. Olivia's thoughts drifted as the organ music played in the background. She tried to let the music wash through her and rid her of her bad mood. The reason for her foul temper was the news she'd received the previous afternoon. She couldn't believe head office had chosen to promote the little troublemaker she'd mentored. She'd taught the pest everything she knew, and the little overachiever had outsmarted her and stolen the promotion Olivia felt belonged to her. This was the third time in the last 5 years she'd been overlooked. It bothered her. The priest clearing his throat brought Olivia back to the present. She wasn't sure why Haley wanted to have her firstborn son baptized, seeing as they'd never been church-going people. Olivia could only guess it must have been something Haley's husband, Jasper, wanted. Olivia gave half an ear to the ceremony as the priest droned on about the usual stuff. Seeing Haley turn to the gathered family and friends caught Olivia's attention. For a brief moment, their gazes met before Haley's moved on, settling on her father and Lauren. Olivia heard the priest ask for Haley's parents to stand and come forward. Olivia immediately put her purse on the floor beside her feet and stood. She frowned. Lauren had also risen and was walking toward Haley and Jasper, her hand firmly in Stephen's clasp. A hand on her forearm made Olivia look down. Not you, dear. Haley and Jasper have asked Stephen and Lauren to be Cody's godparents, Mrs. Foster whispered gently. Embarrassed, Olivia almost fell back into her seat. She sat, stunned as Haley gave a little speech about why she'd asked her father and Lauren to be Cody's godparents. Dad, you were as close to perfect as it gets as a father. All Hannah's and my friends envied us for having such a wonderful dad. You always seemed to know when to be strict and when to be strict, when to be gentle, when to scold us, and when to be understanding. You always listened and always made us feel like we were your priority. And then you brought Lauren into our lives and made our little family perfect. Lauren, you are everything I hope to be as a woman and a mother. Whenever I'm unsure of what to do, I ask myself, What would Lauren do? What would Lauren say? I know Hannah does the same, and in all these years following, that method of problem solving has never steered me wrong. Thank you for being you. Thank you for loving Hannah and I as if we were your own. Jasper and I both agree that if anything were to happen to us, we couldn't think of two people we'd want more to raise our son, our precious Cody. Tears rolled down Olivia's face. Not tears of joy for her daughter or grandson, but tears of sadness and pain, and yes, anger. How could Haley give a speech like that, knowing her mother was in the audience? She had to know how hurtful and humiliating her words would be to Olivia. Olivia felt like storming out. She would have had that not meant even more people witnessing her embarrassment. Even as she seethed in anger and resentment, a little voice tried to be heard. At first faint, but with each passing moment louder and more demanding of her attention. You reap what you sow. A kaleidoscope of images from the past cascaded through Olivia's mind. Each showed missed opportunities, missed birthdays, missed events, missed breakfasts, and missed bedtimes. Times she could have been there for her daughters, but had opted instead to prioritize her work. At first, it had just been simpler to allocate more of their care to Mrs. Foster in order to escape their sad, accusing eyes and avoid their endless, awkward questions about why she and their daddy took turns to live with them. Guilt made it easier to stay away from home. Throwing herself even more into her career offered a refuge from her shame and sense of responsibility for what had happened. The more hours she worked, the more relieved she felt. Later, with the routine established, it was just accepted by everyone, and before she knew it, they were finishing high school and off to university. By then, they truly didn't need her. Awareness hit and hit hard, knocking the wind out of her. For nearly her whole adult life, she'd made the wrong choices. She'd chosen avoidance over acceptance and making amends to her daughters. She'd chosen material success over love. She'd chosen money and prestige, status and career over family. A career that had been dying a slow and painful death for 5 years. Olivia slumped against the hard wooden back of the pew. She was alone. They had each other. Haley had made it clear with her speech that in her eyes, Olivia wasn't her mother, not in the real sense of the word. She was just the egg donor. Olivia couldn't avoid the truth any longer. She'd failed in the most important role of her life. Steve and Lauren, the girls and their spouses, had a close-knit circle of love and support. She had no one. She would never be part of their inner circle. She would never know love the way they knew it. Defeat and loss, Olivia discovered, were worse than death. Death gave you a reprieve from your choices. Defeat and loss had to be lived with.